you have people who see The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, or they see Heretic, and then they go to the LA Visitor Center and they want to talk to sister missionaries.
Really?
And it's true. We are getting referrals. People are referring themselves. They see this movie.
Would you say these portrayals are a net positive or negative for the church?
It is the responsibility of every content creator and every member of our church to make this a positive.
Is the media attention related to the baptisms we're seeing?
I would actually say
everyone is obsessed with Latter-day Saints right now, sometimes known as Mormons. They are all over the media. TikTokers are claiming that Mormons are their new Roman Empire and they're obsessed with them. Secret Lives of Mormon Wives has swept Hulu ratings and it is just everywhere. It is making waves in media and some might even say flooding the earth. So with all of this media attention, there has been a surge of convert baptisms and we're reaching record rates right now. So to get to the bottom of why this is happening right now and what members might be able to do to help, I've brought in Christian McComber. He is a creator on the Missionary Universe channel, and he is a missionary enthusiast and thinks about this all the time. So we are going to have a fun conversation about missionary work and the media today. So your channel is called Missionary Universe. What inspired you to start creating content for Latter-day Saints?
honestly, it was a friend of mine. His name is Shane Gardner. And I think everyone needs a Shane Gardner in their life. Someone who just believes in you more than maybe you even believe in yourself. He came to me, he said, look, the momentum we have in our ward right now, it was during 2020. And that was a time when in California, you couldn't even go to a church building. Yet we in our ward were baptizing every week.
Wow.
So we had a lot of momentum. It was very exciting. And he's like, we need to bring this to the world. And he pitched me on starting a YouTube channel. And I had been seeing like there was a lot of opportunity to hasten the work. And I was looking for an avenue to bring that to life. And when he pitched me on starting a YouTube channel, I thought, maybe this is the way. And so I acted on that and we started down that path. And the Lord has really led and guided our efforts in incredible ways. And so
I think that's incredible. And certainly missionary work is a topic that should always be important and on our minds, but I feel like it is taking a forefront right now because of a few different things. One of them is the fact that we are in the media a lot of late. Could you maybe just describe what are some of the most important pieces of pop culture that's bringing the church into the limelight right now?
I really don't love The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, but I do think it's getting a lot of attention. I also didn't love, Book of Mormon the musical. That gets a great turnout every year. There's, I've seen on your channel American Primeval, and a lot of it is fiction. But there is something interesting about when I think sometimes the adversary is behind a lot of and I'm a writer by trade. And so I look at the story and I look at the narrative they're trying to create. And I'm like, I just don't see God in this. And maybe you disagree, but I'm just like, so I was talking with one of my friends in Brazil who was baptized while I was there. And I talked to him about this and we were counseling and he said, it's funny. I feel like the adversary always tries to get in the way of the church, but he just ends up making us stronger. And that's kind of how I see a lot of the things that are happening in the media. I think it's just an opportunity. Any challenge is really just an opportunity.
Well, so you've mentioned a few things that have come out recently, like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, American Primeval, and there's more like, Heretic or Netflix's.
Oh, Heretic. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Keep Sweet, Pray, Obey, and there was a drama last year with Ballerina Farm, and I feel like there's always something. But you also mentioned the Book of Mormon musical, and that one's not necessarily new. That one came out in like 2010, I want to say, and that was like a different Mormon moment. Mitt Romney was running for president around those a few years, Book of Mormon musical, and there were a few other things that the media called it the Mormon moment because we were just in the limelight. But there's data to suggest that we are in another Mormon moment right now. In fact, it might even be bigger than what it was in 2012, at least if you take a sample of like the volume of conversations around the church on Twitter or X. it like cleans the clock of 2012. Like there's so much more buzz around the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints right now. And so how is the Mormon moment of today different from the Mormon moment of 2012? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the the church is always growing and evolving. And so I think there were things happening in 2012, right? The mission age has just changed. Um, I had just come home from my mission in the late end of 2012. And that's why Book of Mormon the musical was top of mind for me, because I had just come home from being a missionary. And then the Book of Mormon the musical was playing in my local theater. And in Seattle, it played at the Paramount. And I remember my dad going to see it. And I think if you want to make fun of missionaries, if you want to, what really bothered me about Book of Mormon the musical is the way they targeted converts. That really bothered me.
Mm.
But to get back to your point about what's different here and what's different then, I think because of the advent of social media, and we saw 10 years ago, they had that moment. And I think Elder Bednar was inspired with his Flood the Earth invitation. We need to get on social media. We need to flood the earth. And we've seen how that's evolved, both with my channel, with your channel, and there's so many channels out there that we can be supporting, that we can be rallying behind. And because we have all these social media channels, I believe there is more opportunity to enter the conversation, and almost in a guerrilla way. Like something's happening in culture, we can immediately intercept that. We can say, hey, this is happening. And maybe somebody watching this doesn't have their own channel that they're running, but they can love our content with that little heart button. They can share it. And most importantly, they can invite their friends to come and see, to come to church, see what we're really about.
I feel like that's a really good point because if I think back at the landscape in 2012, like the Latter-day Saint creator space, influencer space was just so nascent and practically non-existent. I mean, you had YouTubers, but there weren't like a lot of Latter-day Saint YouTubers. There weren't Instagrammers who were making their living being like a Latter-day Saint creator, anything like that. It just was so non-existent. And so the narratives were so driven by mainstream media, and we didn't really have a say in how that was being perceived. But now, like you mentioned, with so many creators, if mainstream media or Hollywood comes out with something, we can respond, but we also are proactive. Like there are mainstream Latter-day Saints who are making waves in various influencer industries who are incredibly influential in their spheres and are able to be advocates for the restored gospel of Jesus Christ in small ways and sometimes in huge ways. So that's a really good point. One question I have is like, why are we getting so much attention right now? Why is Hollywood and the media fixated or very interested in content around Latter-day Saints?
For this, I think I'll lean on my experience as a creative director in advertising. So whenever you're trying to get a message to the world, you always want to bring in a human insight, or you want to bring in something that is true. The truth sells faster than anything. And even those who choose to sell a lie, they have to pair it with a truth or it won't sell. And I think they have these moments where, and you see it, you can watch any movie and you'll find like, oh, that's like something in the gospel. That's like something in the gospel. And we all, in our culture, we rally around it, but it's what propagates. It's, Star Wars, the hero's journey, the hero with 1,000 faces is really just a new creative wrapper for the plan of salvation. And so I think what Hollywood is realizing is there's some truth here. And there's some human truth that we can tap into, like the desire to be perfect, right? I think that's one of the things that drives the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and why they want to use that Mormon name, because there is a desire for perfection. And on social media, sometimes that desire for perfection can take an ill turn, and that becomes something interesting to explore, something that people can tap into. I wish they call it the Secret Lives of Mom Talk. And I wish we could start a petition or something to get them to change the name, but it is what it is.
That is a really interesting insight. I was not expecting. That is really cool. And as you kind of alluded to, not all of this coverage is flattering. Some of it is very unflattering for the church, whether it's Secret Lives of Mormon Wives painting the church as like highly sexualized hedonism on the one hand and also very strict rules on the other, or Heretic painting missionaries as naive, or American Primeval painting Latter-day Saints as inherently violent. Sometimes these are not flattering portrayals at all. Would you say these portrayals are a net positive or negative for the church?
I think it is the responsibility of every content creator and every member of our church to make this a positive. But I do think their intent is not pure. I think a lot of the content they're putting out now, they are leveraging truth and trying to twist it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And sometimes that twist can create momentum of its own, and it creates, division, which social media really, it's like storytelling, right? Conflict drives the story.
Yeah.
But one of the things that writers of movies or even advertisements know is that really what drives a story is character. And I look at some of the challenges that Heavenly Father is allowing to be placed upon us and around us, and I truly believe that in the midst of this time, new heroes will rise.
That is well put. I tend to be a little bit more of a optimist in that like all publicity is good publicity when it comes to all the media attention. Like, hey, if it gets us more attention, then maybe we can turn it into a positive thing, which is something you talked about. So I'm really interested in your thoughts in reaction to the news that broke really recently, where Elder Cook went to an MTC devotional and he talked about how we've had unprecedented convert baptisms. He specifically said in this church news article that in 2024 we had over 308,000 convert baptisms, and that's the most we've had in 25 years. But he also said that in the last 12 months, ending May 31st, so June of last year to May of this year, we've had the largest number of convert baptisms in any 12-month period in this dispensation. And he said in the first quarter of this year, convert baptisms are up 20% in every single area of the world. So even people who say like, oh yeah, that's growing, but it's only in Africa, or it's only in South America. The reality is it is growing everywhere. So I see this surge in baptisms and interest in the church in media. And I'm wondering, what do you think is the connection there? Is the media attention related to the baptisms we're seeing, or is it something independent?
I would actually say, so I have an interesting perspective on this because as Missionary Universe, we are, of course, in the space of content and culture. We're also on the front lines of missionary work. So I go to stakes and to zones, and I give trainings on preach my gospel, missionary effectiveness. Some of the things that I've been seeing that have been quietly been going on in the background that I think have hastened the work are one, a focus on goal setting. Goal setting is essential for any success in any field. It is an eternal principle. And when I saw how President Nelson shifted our youth program to be focused on goals, and when you say, when each Tuesday night and every Sunday, the youth are reciting, it's like an oath, it's like a battle cry.
Yeah.
I am a beloved son of God, and He has a work for me to do with all my heart, might, mind, and strength. Where have you heard heart, might, mind, and strength? Fourth section of D&C. We are including more missionary work into that youth training. So I think more youth are hitting the ground running when they serve. I also believe that on, with social media, you're able to share more of what works. And you are able to expedite that across, and it's not a secret anymore, right? Maybe one mission, like I know missionaries in Portugal who are baptizing every week. I know missionaries in Thailand, in Japan, and to be able to get all of that information and pass that along to the next generation of missionaries, it's invaluable. So I think there are things happening inside the church that are expediting this process. So I don't know that the media, it might be a little bit of causation, it might be a little bit of correlation. I do also think, and I've seen this in my own ward, where you have people who see the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, or they see Heretic. I've seen this a lot with Heretic. They see Heretic, and then they go to the LA Visitor Center and they want to talk to sister missionaries.
Really?
And And we actually even made a video with Missionary Universe with some sister missionaries. And this really sweet sister missionary, she starts off the video by saying, "We're sister missionaries. Of course, Hollywood makes a horror movie about us, which we get referrals from. Thank you." And it's true. We are getting referrals. People are referring themselves. They see this movie, and I didn't see Heretic. As someone who lives near Hollywood, I know that like each time you see a movie, you're supporting it, and I have a hard time supporting it.
Yeah.
But when I ask, because we've had multiple families now who come and attend my church, or are talking to missionaries, or are setting goals to be baptized, and they've watched Heretic, and I'm like, how could you watch this movie? It's a horror movie, and it's like a whole argument against it. And they're like, well, there is a silver lining at the end of the movie, but I'd like to believe that the Lord is preparing people all around us. And even if they're watching The Heretic or whatever, He's touching their heart. He's with them. He's helping them to see through what some creators have called the accusatory fog and to reach the iron rod, to reach the tree of life and experience the truth.
It's almost like truth can penetrate the darkness and touch hearts, even if it's not in a flattering portrayal, like the truth still wins out. That is really an inspiring way to go about it. What do you think the responsibility is that members have for sharing the gospel right now?
I think like any apostle or 70 would tell you, to love, share, and invite. And I really want to stress the importance of inviting. I'm a strong believer that experience is the greatest teacher, which is why at Missionary Universe we offer these trainings. We want to help you to experience missionary work, to experience the gospel. And you can love your friends and your neighbors. You can always be an example. You can share the gospel. But if you are loving your neighbors and sharing the gospel, but you're not inviting, you're like, hey, we have this really great organization. It does all these amazing things that will train your youth. It's probably going to take over the world someday. And then you don't go, do you want to come sometime? It's like, we're a part of this really awesome thing, and you're not invited. It's so important that we invite. And I think sometimes we are afraid because we don't want to be too pushy. We don't want to, but I would really invite anyone within the reach of my voice to think of an invitation as an act of love, to think about it as like, do you really love your friend? Do you want them to be in the celestial kingdom? Do you want them to think celestial? Do you want their families to be more united? Invite. I'm going to church this Sunday. You want to come? I think the biggest thing that I would say to any of my friends is to invite. Anytime your friend is talking about the church, anytime you have a kid going on a mission or a kid getting baptized, make invitations. Just invite, and you will be amazed at the friends who come into the gospel.
That's pretty profound. And I feel like in this hyper individualized society, we get scared because we don't want to encroach on someone's own path, their own truth or whatever. Like, oh, I don't want to, push that on you. But the reality is, with this hyper individualism has also come an epidemic of loneliness where people are so starving for connection with other people. An invitation to come do something with you, to come see what you love and to come see what has brought meaning and joy to your life, I think is a really compelling ask. It's something that's inviting connection in a world where people are feeling so lonely. Tell me how this missionary momentum has played out in your ward.
We really put an emphasis on setting goals with God. We would help our missionaries. Whenever they would come into our ward, we'd say, what is your goal? How many people will you help to come unto Christ through baptism? And they would set a goal. God will only give you what you prepared for. So and something that people should know is that sometimes success is actually more stressful than failure. And so it's really an act of love on God's part to allow you to set the goal first. And I have seen in my area how when missionaries set higher goals, we are led to more people.
Can you elaborate a little bit more? What do you mean when you talk about higher goals? As someone who never served a proselyting mission herself, what kind of goals are you talking about?
So, let's say some missionaries set goals for the month, some set them for the transfer. I would recommend setting monthly goals. So at the start of the month, you're like, okay, we're going to help, you know, 1 or 2 people to get baptized this month. What I invite missionaries to do is I would say, I asked them, are you afraid of baptizing 1 or 2 people? And they're like, no, I think that's totally possible. I'm like, so why not 3? Why not 4? Why not 10? And what happens is I tell them, look, I'm not asking you to work harder. I imagine you're already putting in the work to help 10 people come into Christ. But as you set a higher goal, 2 things will happen. 1, you will inevitably rise to that challenge, but you're also leaving more space for God to make up the difference in your area. And you're giving more space for God to work within the people that you meet every day. And so as we set these higher goals, I'll give a perfect example. So in July of 2020, we had a few people that we had on date to be baptized. And I said, does this goal we have, do you think it's high enough? I would invite you guys to set a higher goal. And right after that, a neighbor of mine came up to me and said, hey, what church do you go to? Started asking me questions. And I asked him, I said, why did you come up to me? And he said, your voice carries. He'd heard me talking to someone else about the gospel, and it made him interested. And I think because our missionaries had set this higher goal, he, his wife, and his son were all baptized weeks later. And he wasn't on my radar. He wasn't even someone that I knew. But I believe that as you set those higher goals, the Lord will enter your work. And I believe this so strongly because when I was a missionary, a lot of people don't know this. I actually came home early from my mission.
Where did you serve?
I served in Brazil.
Okay.
And I came home a little early, but in my second transfer, I had been invited by one of my leaders, my zone leaders, to set a goal for how many people you would baptize throughout your entire mission. And looking back, I thought I'd set the goal, but I realized it was a goal that God had placed in my heart. But it was 10 times above the mission average. But it was a goal that I felt was possible with God's help. And I was ready to put in the effort. And shortly after setting the goal, I felt this voice in my heart where Heavenly Father's like, are you ready for the sacrifice this is going to be? I'm like, yeah, I'll do anything. And I did develop a rare condition. I wrote a whole book about it. It's called With Your Shield or Upon It. But in the very last week of my mission, that goal was achieved, even though I went home 3 months early.
Wow.
And that was really the beginning of realizing that with God, anything is possible. And my mission president felt very strongly that no matter where you serve in the world, it's possible anywhere. You can see this level of miracles. And as I have stayed involved in that, I think because I came home early, I just felt like I had more to prove. Like I kept going. And I think even that is by divine design because the Lord is, and we see it now with service missionaries who have struggles and then God calls them to a unique work. And I see myself as one of those people who God called me to a unique lifelong mission. And so I think because of that excitement, I've learned these lessons that I can pass on to missionaries. And what I'm sharing right now is really the tip of the iceberg of everything we offer at Missionary Universe. But I've seen it with my new ward. In our new ward, our young men, I talked to them about setting goals. And I remember this conversation I had with one of my young men, and I told him about some of the stories that I'd experienced, my mission stories, my past ward. How many people do you think we could baptize? Or bring back to church? And it amazes me how youth will set way higher goals than you would expect. He's like, I think we could help 100 people. I'm like, this year? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, and I got scared. And I was like, well, maybe. And I didn't want to squander his faith. I didn't want to bring him down because I've experienced that. I've experienced where I come in, I'm like, we're going to do amazing things. And people will be like, well,
Put the wet blanket on there.
yeah. So I said, well, okay, if you're going to achieve this goal, this is how many people we have to bring to church. This is how many people we'd have to invite to be baptized. Do you still think we could do it? He's like, well, maybe we'll reconsider. So I went through that same discussion of what's a good goal? And then should we set it a little higher than what we think is possible to give God some space? And we ended up setting a goal of to help 20 people. And then as we started on that path, it became clear that our bishop really wanted us to include bringing people back to church into our goal. And we did. And we didn't reach our goal right at a year, but in 14 months, we reached that goal. Then the youth surprised me again. They said, well, let's set a goal to help 30 people now. We ended up reaching that goal in 10 months.
Oh, wow.
So you're seeing that we're getting faster. And then there were some youth who'd been with us throughout this whole process. They were just about to leave on missions, and they were just on this high. They're like, let's set a goal of 50 this year. And I almost had a heart attack. I was like, I just feel like we're at capacity. We're doing everything we can. But now, at the end of that year, we've almost achieved that goal. We're just a few people away. And I think back to that young man who told me, let's help 100 people. 3 years later, we've almost helped 100 people. That young man was right.
Wow.
I should have just set a higher goal. And what I learned throughout this process is even if you don't reach your goal in the time you've set, hold on to that goal and work on the Lord's timing, because there may be additional lessons you need to learn along the way.
I think that's really interesting, and I like your framing of leaving space for God because it doesn't necessarily increase the unhealthy pressure on you, but rather leaves room for miracles to happen. I know some people who struggled with their missionary experience will often point to like the pressure to baptize or feeling like they couldn't achieve this unattainable standard and feeling like they weren't worthy enough, they weren't spiritual enough, or they were lazy. What do you say to those people who struggle with what they feel like is inadequacy or failure on their mission?
I think it's important to remember that character drives the story and that God is the greatest writer. So when you're going to write a movie about someone, you think about, okay, who is this character? And the first thing you have to do is know everything about this character. And then you introduce challenges. And if you really know your character, you know how that character will progress through those challenges. It's the same thing that God does with us. And the reason that I learned to hold on to your goal, I reached my mission goal in faster than the time that I'd set, but it was through God. What I didn't anticipate was that God was going to make me someone who was incredibly excited about missionary work, sick as a missionary. And I remember placing my hands on other people to be healed. They're healed in a matter of hours. And I know it's not right to say, but I couldn't help but think, why not me? 13 years later, I can look at young Christian and I can say, are you glad that God gave you pain in your hands and your shoulders and your feet? Are you glad that you came home a little early from your mission, but that it left you with the desire to keep going? Think of how different my story would be if I stopped as a missionary, if I didn't keep going. And so maybe you don't reach the goal in the time you set, or maybe you felt like your mission had an unhealthy standard. What I would challenge that young person with is, what more do you need to learn in achieving this goal, and how can God help you get there? There will be times where you will feel inadequate. There will be times where you feel inadequate as a parent, as a husband, as a father, as a wife, as a young men's advisor, as an employee, as a business owner. There will be times where you are not enough. And at those times, bring God into your life. Kneel down, bow your head, and you'll be amazed at how God can fill things in you. And I think sometimes God wants us to set higher goals because he wants to be involved. He wants to be with you in the effort. And if you include him in that journey, don't put the pressure on you. Put it on God. Be like, God, I'm setting this goal. I'm listening to my advisors. I'm listening to your leaders. Help me reach this goal. God loves to take your pressure. If you can put that pressure on God, and work with him to achieve it, he will always come through for you. It may not be in the way you expect, but he will always come through.
I feel like today missionaries are encountering different challenges than they did 20 years ago, more years ago. People are less likely to open their doors than before, and in-person interactions are getting more rare as our lives become increasingly digital. How do you see the nature of missionary work evolving? Are we still, what role does like tracting still play moving forward? How do you see missionary work shifting over the next while?
As Preach My Gospel chapter 9 says, it's good to keep many lines in the water. So I think there should be a social media component. There should be even a knocking doors component. And you have to work within your area, like it also says in Preach My Gospel chapter 9, while each area may be unique, the principles of finding are universal. So what I see as the biggest evolution in missionary work is actually an even greater importance on the personal one-on-one interaction, because not every missionary is going to be an elder TikTok or a Jasmin on social media. And you can't watch my channel and baptize yourself. You need someone who can sit down with you and say, hey, you've got an addiction. You've got these things you're working on. How can we work with God to overcome that? How can we help you progress towards this goal you've set with God? And as missionaries improve at setting goals and understanding, oh, I'm setting this goal, it's a little scary, but I'm going to rely on God. I mean, very early on in the process of meeting someone as a missionary, you should invite them to set a goal to be baptized. And the more comfortable you are setting goals with God, and the more you learn how you set your own goals with God, the better you can help them achieve their goals. You can say, hey, let's set a goal for this day to be baptized. Right now, that may feel impossible to you. But from now until that day, God is going to enter your life and move you and shape you and shift you into becoming this person who is ready. So much of what we experience in our eternal, like in our earthly life, is transactional. That's why I hate the comparison of sales and missionary work, because I think so much of sales is transactional, whereas missionary work is transformational. You really are helping someone to adopt eternal significance into their life. And as you help others to come unto Christ and help them to set goals with God, help them to grow and become, well, I know missionary work will continue to evolve, and maybe it'll be social media, maybe it'll be meta, maybe it'll be virtual reality, experiencing the different kingdoms. As a creative director in advertising, I could see infinite possibilities for the future of missionary work and enhancing the personal experience of people coming into the gospel. What I know as a missionary and as a disciple of Jesus Christ is that the personal connection will always be the strongest. And so learning missionary principles, reading Preach My Gospel as a family, adopting these heavenly concepts into your life and living them, like it says in Preach My Gospel chapter 6, just as important as what you do is who you are and who you are becoming. And it's in those personal connections that becoming takes place.
What do you think is the number one thing that members or parents can do to help support and prepare missionaries?
I would say helping your children to, one, you can create these systems in their life, right? Like it says in Atomic Habits, rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. You can incorporate daily scripture study, family home evening, going to church on Sunday, being consistent. You can be an example to your children. I'm going to say this again, goal setting. Just as important as what you do is who you are and who you are becoming. And if you can help your children to understand the potential of goal setting and realize that every time you set a goal, this isn't an expectation, it's a possibility. And as you strive for that possibility, you will learn and grow. To make goals exciting, I would love to see more missionaries enter the field with an understanding that I am here to set goals. These goals will scare me, these goals will challenge me, but it will be a positive experience for me and everyone I meet. as you become a goal-setting individual, as you adopt goal setting as a system in your life, you can grow and become in ways that you really can't do without goal setting. And so I think if I had to choose one aspect that you could add to your youth that will prepare them to make them not only enjoy the mission, but really thrive as a missionary and gain a lifelong love for missionary work, I would say learning to set goals and learning to put in the work necessary to achieve those goals.
So, from a member missionary perspective, what do you see is the number one mistake members are making in their attempts to share the gospel online or in person?
Yeah, I would say online, I think I'm still learning to be better at sharing the gospel online. I think, that I could break down different social media. Maybe we'll do this someday. We'll be like watching different social media videos. Okay, maybe they could have done this. Maybe they could have done that.
A nice critique or a S tier ranking?
Yeah, exactly. I think just on the individual level, I think the number one thing we can do more is invite. I think the more we are inviting, really making sure that you're getting, hey, I'm going to church this Sunday. You want to come? The transformation happens in the invitation. And I know it's the scariest part of love, share, and invite. Loving, that comes very naturally. Sharing, that's just something that we do, When someone's sick, we give them cookies. When, like sharing is just who we are. That invitation, I think, is that next peak. It's that next hill to climb. And when we get there as a community, I think we could easily see 400,000 new convert baptisms, 600,000, or even a million. I think it really is that one piece, helping others to set goals with God, setting goals yourself, and extending the invitations to make that all happen.
I mean, it is so natural for creators to give calls to action for a variety of things. Why not the greatest thing on earth? And I noticed that on your channel, you were talking about how, like, if you want to learn more, come tour a church building in your local area. And it just made it so much more accessible. Like, oh, that's very actionable. That's easy to do in my area. Just for me, no matter where I live, I could potentially check out a church building. It just felt like it brought it down to a level where someone could actually take action in a non-threatening way. So I think that is really important. Last question I have for you is, why do you believe in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
I have a very personal relationship with God, and this is where He's led me. I have accepted Jesus Christ into my heart on numerous occasions. I've explored many different beliefs. I grew up in Seattle in a place with many different cultures and many different ways of life. And I would always ask questions and I was curious and I've read all these different scriptures and I wanted to see where it all fit together because I believe that someday we will have a unity of the faith. Like it says in Ephesians 4:5, one faith, one church, one baptism. That's the goal, unity on a global scale. And I believe unity, world peace, is only possible through Jesus Christ and Heavenly Father. And so I will always be bold in inviting others to live the gospel because I know God. I know what God can do for you. And as you adopt the systems, the these heavenly, divine attributes that God has, you live a happier life and it will ultimately lead us to a better world. So, yeah, I would say the more you know God and the more you know Jesus Christ, the more you will come to know that this church is true. I mean, I know there's kind of a thing in culture right now about when I bear my testimony, maybe I say I believe. And that's great. If that's how you feel, with what I've experienced, with the relationship I have with God, I can only say I know this church is true.
That's amazing. I feel like your passion for the gospel and especially missionary work is super clear and transparent. I mean, it's very energizing. So thank you for sharing your messages and for helping us understand a little bit better how we can support missionary work, move missionary work forward. And for viewers, you can find Christian at Missionary Universe on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. And I want to know in the comments below what you think we can be doing better as a church to support the missionary effort. And we will see you next time.